Alright everyone, if you're still here, it means the warm-up is over. We've walked through the ancient origins of the multiverse, the celestials, the stones, the gods, and the hidden kingdoms that shaped everything before history even began. And now, at last, we step into the heart of it all, the jewel in the crown, the Infinity Saga itself. This is the golden age of heroes, the slow rise of Thanos, the legend of the Avengers, before they ever stood in the same room. But if you think you already know this story, stay with me, because this era hides realities most people never connect. The explosion of Marvel television, from the agents of S.H.I.T.I to the street-level defenders of Netflix. A few quiet multiversal threads that nobody told you were part of the same tapestry. All of it is being pulled back into the canon, one piece at a time, and almost no one has shown you how those pieces truly lock together. So we keep going with this impossible challenge. I've rewatched everything, I've taken notes on everything, and together we're going to assemble this giant puzzle, one piece at a time, until the whole picture finally stands in front of us. You won't find this timeline anywhere else. You're here with Vericade. Let's begin Part 9. The year is 2008. The Age of Heroes does not begin with a hero. It begins with a man who sells war for a living. Tony Stark is the heir to an empire built on weapons, the genius behind the guns, the brilliant son who never once asked where his creations land once he signs the check. We left him a grieving teenager who inherited that empire too young. Now he is its master, and the empire has made him rich and famous and blind. Then the empire turns on him. In the deserts of Afghanistan, the man who armed the world is nearly destroyed by his own product, taken by the Ten Rings, that ancient power we met long ago, the thousand-year empire of Shu Wenwu, now scattered into cells of mercenaries trading on its old name. Wounded, kept alive only by a stranger named Yinsen and a magnet wired to his chest, Stark is given a simple order: build them a weapon. He gives them something else. In the dark, with scraps, he builds a heart of light, a miniature arc reactor, the very energy his own father chased for decades and never finished, and around it, a suit of iron. Yinsen does not walk out of that cave. With his last breath, he tells Stark not to waste the life he just paid for, and the man who walked in selling death walks out wearing salvation. The weapons dealer is gone. Iron Man is born, not in glory, but in a cave, from grief, and a promise to a dying man. The world waits for the old Tony Stark to come home. Instead, he stands before the cameras and ends it all. Stark Industries will never build another weapon. The man who profited from every war on Earth has just declared peace on himself. But declaring peace is not the same as making it. So Tony disappears into his workshop, and from the crude iron of the cave he forges something new, a sleeker armor, red and gold, the legendary Mark III, a second skin, built not for war, but for atonement. And his first flight in it is not a victory lap. It is a journey back. Back to the same desert that nearly broke him, to the village Yinsen called home, where his own weapons are still in the wrong hands, still tearing apart the lives Yinsen gave his own to save. Tony stands in the ashes of his own sins, and one by one, he undoes them. The promise made in the cave is kept in fire. But a billionaire who walks out of a cave in an iron suit does not go unnoticed. The agency Peggy Carter and Howard Stark built from the ashes of the war, S.H.I.T.I, still standing all these decades later, sends an agent to Tony's door. His name is Phil Coulson, remember it. And while S.H.I.T.I watches Tony, Tony fails to watch the man closest to him. His mentor, Obadiah Stane, the steady hand everyone trusts, the one who runs the company while Tony plays genius, was never a mentor at all. He bought the kidnapping. He paid for Tony to vanish. And when Tony comes home alive and reborn, Stane builds a monster from his protege's own work, and the man who taught him becomes the thing he has to destroy. Only one of them walks away. When the smoke clears, S.H.I.T.I is there. Coulson hands Tony a lie to read at the podium. A cover story to hide the man in the iron suit. Tony looks at the cameras, and he can't help himself. 3 words. I am Iron Man. The secret dies the moment it is born, and the Age of Heroes finally has a face. That same night, Tony comes home to a stranger waiting in the dark. An eye patch, a long coat, a voice that already seems to know how the story ends. This is Nick Fury, and he has not come to celebrate. He has come to tell Tony a truth that will shape everything to follow. Iron Man is not the only one out there. There are others. And Fury dreams of gathering them, the remarkable few, into something the world has never had. He calls it the Avengers Initiative. Hold on to that name. It will come to mean everything. And while the world watches Iron Man rise into the light, Fury is already moving in the dark, beginning something with no name and no face. Project T.A.H.I.T.I. The idea is as bold as it is unsettling. To take the blood of a long-dead Kree, the same blue-skinned empire we came to know back in the 90s, and turn it into a way to bring the dead back to life. A second chance against the one enemy even S.H.I.E.L.D. cannot beat. It sounds like salvation. It always does, at first. What it will cost, and who will pay, is a wound this timeline has not opened yet. A year passes since the day Tony Stark told the world he was Iron Man, and far from the cameras, another mind is at work. Aldrich Killian, a brilliant man once soured by a rejection from Tony Stark himself, is chasing a power of his own, a fire lit inside the human body. He calls it Extremis. It rewrites a person from within, healing any wound, burning hotter and striking harder than any human should. A miracle in theory, a bomb in truth. The early ones cannot hold the fire, and when they break, they do not simply fall. They take everything around them with them. In time, those deaths will become a problem Killian needs to hide, and his answer will be built out of fear. He will invent a monster to take the blame for the explosions, a terrifying face with an ancient, 1,000-year-old name, the Mandarin. The whole world will fear that face, never guessing it is only a mask, never seeing the real man using it to hide his failures and pull the strings from the shadows. And no one will realize that the true 10 Rings, that ancient power we met long ago, is still out there, still watching, and will not forgive a thief who steals its name. But that reckoning belongs to another part. For now, the fire is only just lit. By the spring of 2010 comes one of the strangest weeks in the life of Nick Fury, a span of days when the whole world seems to wake at once. The heroes step out of the shadows together, and the man with the eye patch runs between them, trying to hold a rising universe in his 2 hands. And at the heart of that week stands the man we have followed since the cave, carrying a secret almost no one knows. Tony Stark is dying. The very heart that keeps him alive is turning against him. The palladium at its core is leaking poison into his blood, a little faster every time he wears the suit. The glow in his chest gave him his second life and made him Iron Man, and now that same glow is taking it all back. So he does what frightened, brilliant, self-destructive men do. He spirals. Certain these are his final months, he hands his empire to the one person he trusts, Pepper Potts, and then falls apart in front of everyone. A long, loud goodbye to a world he never tells he is leaving. And in the middle of that goodbye, the past comes to collect. It finds him on a racetrack in Monaco. A stranger walks into the road carrying whips of pure lightning. Ivan Vanko, the man the world will come to call Whiplash. He has no interest in money or chaos. He wants the name Stark, and the reason runs back a whole generation. Here is the part the legend skips. That heart of light in Tony's chest, the arc reactor, Howard Stark did not dream it up alone. In the beginning, he had a partner, a man named Anton Vanko, and together they laid the first stones of that miracle. Then came betrayal. Anton was cast out, erased, scrubbed from the story, while the Stark name grew rich on what the two of them began. He died poor and forgotten, staring at a fortune he believed was half his. His son grew up inside that bitterness. And now Ivan stands on a racetrack with his father's stolen lightning strapped to his chest, a dark mirror of the man he has come to ruin. He is not a random villain. He is a buried family sin, clawing its way back into the light. Tony survives, barely, and the world learns that the Golden Man is not untouchable after all. This is Fury's week, so of course Fury moves. With Tony unraveling and a target now on his back, S.H.I.E.L.D. plants a watcher inside his world, a quiet new assistant named Natalie Rushman. but the assistant is a mask, and beneath it stands one of the most dangerous people S.H.I.E.L.D. has ever fielded, Natasha Romanoff, hiding in plain sight, underestimated by everyone around her, exactly the way she likes it. And we should point out one thread here that most people miss. Natasha carries a wound from a mission in Ukraine, where a bullet found her, fired by a masked ghost who never misses. You already know that ghost. We watched him a few parts ago, on a quiet road in 1991, finishing the work that left a teenage Tony Stark an orphan, the Winter Soldier. Natasha does not know his name, Tony does not know he exists, and the line running straight from that ghost to the very man whose house she is now standing in, none of them can see it. But we can. Tony's salvation, when it finally arrives, comes from the unlikeliest place of all, the father he spent his whole life resenting. Buried in the relics of his father's old work, Tony finds a message Howard left behind, hidden for a son he knew might one day need saving. Howard had glimpsed a new element, a clean and perfect power his own time could never build, and sealed the secret where only his boy would think to look. So a dying man builds a new element into existence on the floor of his own home. And here is something we've already talked about on this channel. That new element he creates may be no ordinary metal. It could be Uru, the legendary substance born in the heart of a dying star, the same metal the gods of Asgard forge into their mightiest weapons. A piece of heaven, recreated in a basement by a man trying not to die. Whatever its true name, it works. The poison clears, and the thing that was killing Tony Stark becomes the thing that saves him. But Tony is no longer the only man in iron. At the lowest point of his spiral, his oldest friend, James Rhodes, the soldier who trusts Tony more than Tony trusts himself, makes a hard choice and takes one of the suits into steadier hands than Tony's. And from Tony's own creation, a second hero is forged, War Machine. Vanko, meanwhile, finds a new patron, Justin Hammer, a rival weapons maker who has spent years choking on Tony's shadow, pulls Vanko out of a cell and bankrolls him, certain he can aim this angry genius at Stark like a loaded gun. But you do not point a man like Vanko at anyone. Hammer asks for an army of armored soldiers to outshine Iron Man. Vanko gives him an army of machines instead, faceless drones with no men inside to get in the way of his revenge. And it all comes to a head at the Stark Expo, Tony's grand showcase of the future, a gleaming fairground built to sell the world its own tomorrow. There, Vanko turns that army, and War Machine's own borrowed suit, against everyone. Hammer learns too late that he never owned the weapon he paid for. In an instant, a celebration becomes a battlefield, with thousands of innocent people caught in the middle of a dead man's grudge. And there, at last, the two friends stand back to back, Iron Man and War Machine, brothers in iron, until the grudge dies with the man who carried it. And somewhere in that terrified crowd, this is another one we've talked about on this channel, stands a small boy in a homemade Iron Man mask, looking up at his hero. A child named Peter Parker who has no idea what any of this will one day mean for him. But that is a story for another part. When the smoke clears, the Expo lies in ruins, and the day belongs to the heroes. And for once, Tony Stark lets himself have something simple. After all the dying and the spiraling and the running from his own end, he turns to Pepper. No longer just the woman who runs his company, no longer just the one who keeps his life from falling apart, and finally reaches for a life worth living. The man who walked out of that cave alone is, at last, no longer alone. Still in 2010, Bruce has finally found something that almost looks like peace. He's living in the favelas of Rio de Janeiro, working a quiet job in a soda bottling plant, learning yoga and breathing techniques to keep his pulse under control. He hasn't transformed in 5 months, and in secret, over the internet, he's been working with a scientist he has never actually met, a stranger who calls himself Mr. Blue. Bruce signs his own messages as Mr. Green. Neither of them knows the other's real name. The man on the other end believes he can build a cure, and at one point, after weeks of correspondence, Bruce takes the risk of mailing him a single sample of his own blood from Brazil. He has to trust someone if he's ever going to be free, and Mr. Blue is the only candidate he has. Then, one tiny accident undoes all of it. A drop of his blood falls into a soda bottle on the production line, and that bottle ends up in Milwaukee, in the hands of a man who drinks it and is hospitalized with gamma poisoning. That trace is all Ross needs. He hits the brakes on every other priority and throws together a strike team within days. Because Banner is the kind of target who vanishes the second the trail goes cold. At the head of that team is a Russian-born British Royal Marine, on loan from the UK, named Emil Blonsky, one of the most decorated soldiers Ross has ever seen, on paper, and a man pushing 40 who is feeling every year of it. What Ross doesn't tell him, or any of the men, is what they're really hunting. As far as the team knows, Banner is just a fugitive scientist who stole military secrets. Blonsky and his team track Bruce to the plant, and they almost have him, but almost isn't enough. Cornered, Bruce's heart rate finally breaks past the line he spent 5 months holding it under, and the Hulk comes back. He tears through Blonsky's men in seconds and disappears into the night, leaving the soldier alive and very much rattled. Blonsky has just watched something impossible end his team, and he demands to know from Ross what they were actually hunting. Ross has no choice but to tell him the truth, that Banner and the Green Monster are the same creature, the product of the General's old super soldier project. Blonsky doesn't recoil. He wants what he has just seen, and he volunteers to take a dose of an experimental serum the program managed to develop. It makes him faster, stronger, almost impossible to put down, and, slowly, it begins to twist both his body and his mind. Bruce, meanwhile, makes his way back to the United States, back to the only place he was ever happy. He returns to Culver University, and he finds Betty. She has rebuilt her life in the years he's been gone. She has a new boyfriend, a psychiatrist named Leonard Sampson, and a quiet existence Bruce has no right to walk back into. But neither of them can pretend the door is closed. They reunite, and for a single night, Bruce is the man he used to be. What he doesn't know is that Sampson, uneasy, suspicious, and convinced he's protecting Betty, picks up the phone and calls her father. Ross descends on Culver University with everything he has, Blonsky leading the charge. The serum has made Blonsky reckless, and he throws himself at the Hulk, and is broken for it. In the chaos, Betty is nearly taken out, and the Hulk shields her and carries her from the battlefield. By the time he calms and changes back to Bruce, the two of them are deep in the woods, with only one person left who might help them. Mr. Blue is in New York. He's been waiting. The two of them reach him, and Mr. Blue turns out to be a brilliant cellular biologist named Samuel Stearns. When Bruce tells him he is Mr. Green, the realization of who had sent him that gamma-irradiated blood hits Stearns like a religious experience. Stearns has built a possible antidote, though he admits he doesn't know if it will cure Bruce for good or only undo a single transformation. It's a coin flip, and it could just as easily end him. Bruce takes the gamble anyway, and it works. The Hulk surfaces, and for the first time, something drags him back down into Bruce. But whether that was a true cure, no one gets the chance to find out, because Stearns has been hiding what he really did with that blood. Bruce had sent him a single sample, hoping it might lead to a cure. Stearns multiplied it into a vast supply, rack after rack of vials, dreaming of a new science that would make humanity immune to disease itself. He never told Bruce any of it. Horrified, Bruce begs him to destroy all of it, but it's already too late. Ross has tracked them. While Bruce is still pleading with Stearns to destroy the supply, a tranquilizer dart hits him from outside. One of Ross's snipers had the lab surrounded the whole time. Bruce drops before he can do anything, and he and Betty are dragged onto a military helicopter under heavy guard. The two of them have been captured. As far as Ross is concerned, the 5-year hunt is finally over. He believes he's won. But back in the lab, Blonsky has healed from injuries that should have ended him, and the serum has not just rebuilt his body, it has hollowed out his mind. Healing isn't enough for him anymore. He turns on Stearns and demands to be made into something like the Hulk. Stearns warns him. Combined with what's already in his system, the gamma-irradiated blood could create something far worse than the Hulk, something he calls an abomination. Blonsky doesn't care. He forces Stearns to do it anyway. The procedure works, in the worst way possible. Blonsky's body explodes outward into a creature larger than the Hulk and uglier, a true abomination. He smashes his way out of the lab and into the streets of Harlem, and he starts tearing the city apart. Inside Ross's helicopter, Bruce watches the destruction below and understands that he is the only thing in the world standing between this creature and the people of New York. So he asks Ross to open the helicopter door, and he throws himself out of the sky. The Hulk rises out of a crater in the middle of Harlem, and for the first time in his life, Bruce Banner has chosen him. The Hulk and the Abomination tear the city apart, and the Hulk wins, but only barely. He's about to end the Abomination when Betty's voice reaches him, and he stops. He leaves the creature alive for the army to take. And then, as he always does, Bruce Banner slips away from the world that fears him, though the road ahead of him will be darker than any he has walked yet. That road leads him first north into Canada, then farther still, all the way to India, looking for somewhere the world might finally lose his trail. But running has never once made him whole, and somewhere in those quiet years he comes to the edge of the darkest place a man can go. He walks alone into the frozen silence of the Arctic, having decided he no longer wishes to carry the weight of what he is. He lifts a weapon to end it, and the other guy spits the bullet out. The Hulk will not let him die, not even when the man inside begs for it. Bruce Banner cannot escape the world. He cannot cure himself, and now he learns he cannot even lay down his burden. He is bound to the giant, for better or worse, until the very end. And here the story whispers one of its strangest secrets. As the Hulk rages across that ice, the ground shatters and falls away, and for the briefest moment, buried far below, a shield can be seen frozen in the deep. Some believe it was the Hulk's grief, breaking that ice apart, that first stirred the frozen sleep of a man lost since the war. The soldier waiting beneath the snow. We are not there yet, but remember that shield. Remember it. Now turn back to the man who almost cured him. Samuel Stearns, the brilliant biologist who called himself Mr. Blue, did not walk away from that laboratory untouched. In the chaos of Blonsky's transformation, the rising monster hurls him aside, and as he falls, a drop of Bruce's gamma blood seeps into an open wound on his head. It does not kill him. It changes him, swelling his mind into something vast and cold and brilliant beyond any human measure. General Ross will seize him and bury him in a black site for years, a caged genius kept for his own uses. What a mind like that will one day want for itself is a darkness for another part. For now, simply mark the name. Stearns is not finished with this story. And there is one last thread to pull before we leave the Hulk behind. Because the monster Bruce defeated in Harlem does not simply vanish into a cell. The World Security Council, the shadowy hand that steers S.H.I.E.L.D. from above, looks at the Abomination and sees something almost unthinkable: a war hero. In their eyes, the carnage in Harlem was Banner's fault, not Blonsky's, and they want this engine of destruction freed and folded into the Avengers initiative. Fury wants no such thing. So the task falls to two of his agents, Phil Coulson and a colleague named Jasper Sitwell, who quietly cook up a way to make the deal die on its own. Their solution is almost too perfect. They send in a consultant, the one man alive who can ruin a meeting just by walking into it. Stark needles General Ross so relentlessly that the general would sooner burn the deal to the ground than give the council a thing. The Abomination is left to rot in his cell, and the Avengers initiative is spared a monster before it has even truly begun. And far above all of this, in the golden realm of Asgard, this same week is forging a very different kind of hero. Odin stands ready to name his son Thor the new king, but the prince who steps forward is a warrior drunk on his own glory, so hungry for battle that he would set whole worlds aflame to feed his pride. When that arrogance reignites an ancient war with the frost giants, Odin sees the truth. This boy is not ready to rule anything. So the All-Father does something terrible and loving at once. He strips Thor of his power and casts him down to earth to live as a mortal, and the fallen prince crashes into the dust of a quiet New Mexico town. His mighty hammer, Mjolnir, falls with him, but Odin binds it with an enchantment, so that only one who is truly worthy may ever lift it again and hold the power of Thor. The lesson is cruel and simple. The prince must become worthy of his own strength before it will return to him. A god has been humbled, and left to earn his way home. And while Thor falls to Earth, back in Asgard his brother is quietly unraveling. Loki uncovers the secret that has shadowed his whole life. He is no son of Asgard at all, but the abandoned child of Laufey, king of the Frost Giants, the very enemy he was raised to hate. The truth shatters something in him, and he turns on Odin, raging that he was never a true son at all, only a stolen relic, a frost giant kept as a bargaining chip. But Odin is ancient, and his strength has limits. Every so often his body must surrender to a deep, healing sleep to restore the power that sustains him, and he was already near that edge when Loki's fury finally pushed him over it. The old king collapses into the Odin sleep, a slumber that will leave him helpless for days. And with Odin lost to that deep sleep and Thor banished far away on Earth, the throne of Asgard sits empty, so Loki, the wounded son, climbs onto it. Down on Earth, the fallen god finds something he never expected: friendship and the first stirrings of love. He is found by a small team of scientists out in the New Mexico desert, led by Jane Foster, a brilliant astrophysicist who has spent years chasing a strange, recurring tear in the sky. Bursts of light and energy she believes are the mouth of a wormhole, a doorway connecting distant corners of the universe. She has learned to predict when and where the next one will open, and on the night it tears across the desert, she races out to meet it. What she finds at the heart of that storm is not just data, it is a man lying in the sand. What none of them yet realize is that the phenomenon she has chased all these years is the Bifrost itself, the bridge that carries Asgardians between worlds. At her side are Erik Selvig, a seasoned scientist and old family friend who fears this stranger will only bring her trouble, and Darcy Lewis, her quick-witted intern, the one voice keeping everyone's feet on the ground while the impossible unfolds around them. Together, they help this powerless man learn what it means to be human. But Thor is not the only one being watched. S.H.I.E.L.D. is already circling the impossible man who fell from the sky. Among them, the ever-present Coulson, and a familiar face perched high above with a bow in his hands: Clint Barton. The same archer who once spared Natasha in Budapest and brought her into the fold now has his sights trained on a falling god, ready to put him down if the order comes. It does not come tonight, but the man who never misses keeps watching. Back on Asgard, meanwhile, Thor's banishment does not go unmourned. His closest companions, the fierce warrior Lady Sif, and a trio of battle brothers known as the Warriors 3, refuse to accept Loki on the throne. Defying their new king, they slip past the all-seeing gatekeeper Heimdall, who quietly looks the other way, and cross the bridge to Earth to find their banished friend. When they reach Thor, they tell him everything he could not have known from exile: that Odin lives, lost in the Odin sleep, and that Loki now rules in his place. The truth lands hard, and it does not stay secret for long. From the throne of Asgard, Loki sees his old friends reach his brother, and he knows what they will stir. So he reaches for the deadliest weapon in the realm. He sends the Destroyer, a faceless engine of fire, an unstoppable Asgardian war construct, down to Earth to end Thor and anyone who would rally to him. The Destroyer tears into the little desert town, and Thor, stripped of his power, knows he cannot fight it. He is no god now, just a man, and a man cannot win this. So he does the only thing left to him. He gets the townspeople clear, walks out unarmed to face the monster, and asks his brother to spare everyone and take his life instead. The Destroyer strikes him down, and Thor falls, dying in the dust as Jane runs to him. But that is the moment everything turns. The proud prince, who once would have charged in for the glory of battle, has chosen instead to lay down his life for others. And that selflessness is the very lesson Odin sent him to Earth to learn. Far off in its crater, Mjolnir finally judges him worthy. The hammer tears loose and flies across the desert into his outstretched hand, and the power of Thor returns in a storm of lightning. The god is reborn, and this time he is something worthy of the name. He turns the destroyer to scrap and prepares to go home. Back in Asgard, the wounded son has settled on a terrible way to prove his worth. Loki has come to believe that if he cannot be loved as Thor is loved, he can at least be the son who does what no Asgardian ever has: wipe the frost giants, the monsters of every Asgardian bedtime story, out of existence forever. He will aim the Bifrost itself at Jotunheim, hold its full power open like a cannon, and burn the realm of his own birth to nothing. In his broken heart, this is how a discarded child finally earns a father's pride. The cruel irony is that Loki is a frost giant himself, trying to slaughter his own kind to feel worthy of the family that hid the truth from him. The reborn god storms home to Asgard, and out at the far end of the Rainbow Bridge, the two brothers finally face each other. The Bifrost is already blazing at full power, its energy pouring into Jotunheim to tear the realm apart, and the brothers fight across the bridge for the fate of a whole world. But Thor cannot simply overpower it. The only way to choke off that killing beam is to destroy the bridge that channels it. So he raises Mjolnir against the Bifrost itself, the rainbow road between worlds, and brings it crashing down. He knows exactly what it costs him. The bridge is his one path back to the woman he loves on Earth, and shattering it strands him from her, perhaps forever. He saves a realm he was raised to despise, and loses his way home to do it. In the wreckage, the two brothers and their father hang from the broken edge, and Loki, dangling over the endless dark, looks up at the father who could never quite love him the way he longed to be loved. And he lets go. He chooses the abyss over a home that never fully claimed him, but the void does not kill him. Loki falls and falls until he lands at the feet of a figure waiting in the dark, a titan with a purpose, who looks at this broken, furious god and sees a perfect instrument. What that titan whispers to him, and the mission he places in Loki's hands, will bring war to Earth itself. But that is a story for another part. Yes, all of this truly happens in that single, impossible week. And the week ends, quietly, with a report. Natasha Romanoff sets down her verdict on Tony Stark, the man she was sent to watch. And her judgment is blunt. Brilliant, yes, but reckless. Volatile. Not fit to stand among the team Fury dreams of building. So Fury offers Tony a smaller role instead, a consultant, nothing more. And Tony, being Tony, turns him down flat. The world is filling with gods and monsters and men in iron, but the team that might bind them together is still only a name in Nick Fury's mind, for now. The following year, the ice finally gives up its oldest secret. Buried in the Arctic since the war, Steve Rogers is found at last, still alive, held in a frozen sleep by the same serum that once made him a hero. He wakes in a New York he does not recognize, in a century that left him behind. He has slept in the ice for nearly 70 years, and the man out of time has come home to a home that no longer exists. And in these same years, the man who hunted the Hulk is brought low by his own failing body. A heart attack drives General Ross out of the army for good, but it does not soften him. It only changes his weapon. He walks into the halls of power instead, trading the rifle for the law, determined now to cage and control the world's superhumans rather than chase them one by one. And to keep his dying heart beating long enough to do it, he turns to the one mind he knows is brilliant enough to save him: Samuel Stearns, the gamma-touched genius he has kept locked away in the dark since that day in Harlem. The hunter has placed his very life in the hands of a man he caged. Ross thinks he has bought a cure. He has no idea what he has truly invited in.